My name is Eris Moreau, 32 years old from Salt Lake City, Utah. While I was fighting for my life, my family sold my home, cut me off, and left me for dead. 2 years later, I returned, not for forgiveness, but to show them that survival was just the beginning of my revenge. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping true story narrations. This one's personal, painful, and powerful. Let's begin. The letter came on a Tuesday. I'd just returned from my 3rd round of chemotherapy, weak, nauseous, and too tired to make it past the front door. The world moved in a blur during those months, hospital lights, sterile smells, the slow drip of poison into my veins. But that envelope? I remember every inch of it. Thick cream paper. My name printed in harsh black ink. No return address. I opened it without thinking, notice of transfer and vacate. At first, the words didn't register. My vision was already hazy from the meds. But the second line pierced through my fog like a blade, due to the change in ownership of the property located at 436 East Glenrose Avenue. All tenants are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. I blinked. East Glenrose. My condo. The one I'd lived in since grad school. The one my parents helped me buy 6 years ago. The one that had become my refuge from this illness, the place I could still pretend I had control. I read the letter again, and again. The ownership had been quietly transferred to a family trust. That trust had sold it. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even been consulted. Somewhere, in the haze of hospital visits and missed calls, someone had pulled the ground out from under me. My phone sat charging across the room. I didn't even bother calling. I already knew who was behind it, Lenora. My mother. The woman who hadn't visited me once since the diagnosis. She used to say things like, "We're so proud of you, Eris," and family means sticking together. But when I got sick, when the strength she admired turned into something frail and needy, she disappeared. My father, Micah, followed her lead. Always the businessman. Always detached, Yvette? My younger sister hadn't spoken to me in over 4 months. The last thing she texted was, "Just focus on healing. We'll take care of things." Apparently, things meant my entire life. I looked around the condo, the blanket still on the couch from my last fever spell, the pills on the kitchen counter, the stack of unpaid bills I'd been too exhausted to open. And now this, my home was no longer mine. They'd stripped it away like they stripped everything else when I became inconvenient. Vulnerable, sick, for the first time since my diagnosis, I didn't cry, I didn't scream either, I just sat there, clutching the letter, as a new kind of cold settled over me, one that had nothing to do with chemo and everything to do with betrayal. And right then, I made a silent promise, if I lived through this, I'd make them pay for leaving me to die. After the eviction letter, I told myself it had to be a mistake. A clerical error. A miscommunication in a family too busy to notice what they'd done. So, I called First Mom. It rang twice before going straight to voicemail. Her voice, syrupy and composed, instructed me to leave a message and have a blessed day. I didn't. Then Dad. It rang 5 times. No answer. No callback. I tried Yvette. My sister had always been the bridge between us, the one who smiled through tension and sent birthday cards even when we fought. She picked up on the second ring. "Eris?" Her voice was clipped, almost annoyed. "Yvette, they sold the condo," I said. "My condo." Silence. Are you sure?" "They sent a letter. I'm being evicted." "I didn't sign anything." She inhaled sharply, then exhaled like she'd just been waiting for this storm to pass. "It was decided months ago. You weren't really in a position to handle things." "You mean I was too sick to fight back?" Another pause. There were bills, Eris. The family trust was stretched thin. "You had to take my home?" "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it to me." More silence. I can't get into this right now," she said. "I have a meeting." "Of course you do." She hung up before I could say goodbye. that was the last time I heard her voice. After that, every number I tried either went straight to voicemail or was suddenly no longer in service. Emails went unanswered. Even the holiday cards stopped coming. Worse than the silence was what came next. I received a notice from the hospital's billing department. My insurance had lapsed, accidentally cancelled due to an administrative change from the family's private coverage plan. A plan I had been on since college. My copay tripled overnight. Treatments were rescheduled. My oncologist quietly asked if I had any emergency support. I lied and said yes. I learned to survive on hand-me-downs from neighbors, frozen soup, and the kindness of strangers at the chemo center, the Moreaus. The family I'd spent my life trying to impress had ghosted me like I was a shameful secret they didn't want to deal with. A liability to the image they'd spent decades curating. It wasn't just abandonment. It was strategic. Cold. Calculated, and it worked. For a while, I disappeared. I was just another sick girl in a city full of them. Just another file in a clinic drawer marked high risk, limited support. But in that silence, I learned something important. I didn't need their name, I didn't need their money. I needed one thing only: time. Time to get strong again. Time to plan, and when the time came, they'd learn exactly what it felt like to be discarded and forgotten. 2 years can change a person. It changed me. The girl who left Salt Lake City with chemo scars and betrayal buried in her chest wasn't the same one stepping off that bus in the dead of night. I'd cut my hair short, let it grow back wild and unrecognizable. My eyes were sharper now. I didn't smile as easily. I didn't trust at all. I hadn't told anyone I was coming back, not even Mira, my old college roommate who had quietly wired me money when the treatments got rough. Not even the nurses who had slipped me extra blankets and meals when they thought I didn't notice. This return was for me, and for them. I found a small apartment on the west side, nothing fancy, just a place with locks I trusted and a view of the city skyline that reminded me I wasn't invisible anymore. My new name on the mailbox, Eris Wren. I dropped Morrow like dead weight. The name had become toxic, spoiled by those who wore it like a crown while letting me rot in a hospital bed. The first place I visited wasn't their home or the firm downtown. It was the county records office. If I was going to burn down the myth of the Moreaus, I needed facts. Paper trails. Proof. I sat for hours, combing through digital records and physical files. Real estate transfers, family trust updates. Insurance policy shifts, everything. I wasn't a lawyer, but betrayal had taught me to read between the lines. And buried in an archive from 18 months ago, I found the signature that lit the first match. Yvette Moreau, my sister. She'd signed off on the sale of my condo using power of attorney, an outdated document I never revoked because I never imagined she'd use it against me. She sold my home, liquidated my name from the trust, and filed an affidavit claiming I was medically unfit to manage my own affairs. It wasn't just cruel, it was premeditated. They hadn't just let me go, they'd erased me, and in doing so, they'd made one fatal mistake. They believed I'd never come back. But I was here now. Stronger. Smarter. And I had something they'd never expect: distance. Emotional, legal, and strategic distance. I didn't want their love anymore. I wanted the truth, and I wanted to ruin them with it. I left the records office with a folder full of receipts and betrayal humming in my veins like voltage. The Moreaus didn't know I was back, but soon they would, and the daughter they'd ghosted was going to haunt them, for real this time. The cafe was one of those sleek, minimalist places with overpriced matcha and soft jazz playing too loud. The kind of place where people pretended their lives were perfect over $8 lattes. Fitting, really. I chose the corner booth near the window, just like old times. Yvette always liked to sit with her back to the wall. I made sure to leave her that spot, right under the vent where voices carried just a little too well. The mic I wore was tucked under my hoodie drawstring, perfectly hidden. My phone, screen dark, recorded every sound. She arrived late. Of course, and she looked flawless: designer trench coat, nails like polished glass, that signature fake warmth in her smile that used to fool me. Not anymore, heiress, she said, like we'd run into each other by accident at a grocery store, not like she'd helped rob me blind. You're back? I gave her the kind of smile people wear to funerals. Surprise. She sat, crossing her legs like a magazine model. You look good. Healthier than when you ghosted me during chemo? Her face didn't even twitch. It was complicated. I leaned in. So let's uncomplicate it. She hesitated, then reached for her coffee. We did what we had to, heiress. You worked with God, you were disappearing. We didn't think you were going to make it. So you sold my home? She glanced around. Her voice dropped. We used your power of attorney. You signed it years ago. It was legal. But not right. Her eyes met mine then. Cold. Calculating. It was the easiest way to handle your debts. Mom didn't want to risk the trust. We were protecting the family. I nodded, like that made sense. Like the betrayal didn't slice deeper with every word, and the insurance? I asked. Yvette blinked. You cancelled it. Quietly. Then moved money out of the medical account and into the firm's expansion fund. Her fingers tensed around her cup. Where did you hear that? I didn't hear it, I said. I read it. County filings. And you forgot one thing about paperwork. She stared. It's public. Yvette's lips pressed into a line, but she didn't deny it. You were dying. You thought I wouldn't notice. Or come back. Silence. I let it hang there. Long enough for the recorder to pick up her guilt. Long enough for my heart to quiet its rage. She leaned forward. What do you want, heiress? I smiled for real this time. Just a little, nothing today. But you'll know when I want something. And I stood, leaving her in that booth with her untouched latte and that panic she tried to hide behind her perfect skin. By the time I reached the sidewalk, the recording was already backed up to the cloud. Confession, captured, the first crack in the Moreau empire had formed, and I was ready to watch it shatter. I spent the next few days in silence, planning, printing, packaging. You don't confront people like the Moreaus with emotion. They're too practiced at dismissing it. They'll gaslight, deflect, twist your pain into selfishness. But evidence? Documents that bear their signatures, timestamps, transactions? That speaks louder than rage ever could. I pulled the audio from the cafe, isolated Yvette's calm confession, and paired it with the paper trail, forged power of attorney filings, internal transfers from the trust account, cancelled insurance records with dates that aligned too perfectly. I found a copy of an email from the firm's internal server, one I wasn't supposed to see, where Yvette asked a paralegal to expedite the sale of my condo without triggering a notice to me. Her wording was cautious, but the intent was clear. I printed everything. No flash drive. No digital trail they could bury. Just paper, cold. Undeniable and traceable. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked past the sleek glass doors of Moreau Pike, LLP, my family's pride and joy. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I just slipped the unmarked manila envelope through their mail slot at dawn, when the office was dark and the streets were empty. Inside, 78 pages of secrets. I mailed identical copies to the Utah Division of Securities, the IRS Regional Office, and the State Bar of Utah, and I signed none of them. Let the truth walk on its own legs. That night, I sat in my apartment with a cheap bottle of wine and watched the firm's website flicker, probably under maintenance, or maybe under fire. I refreshed their press release page. Nothing. Yet, the following morning, my inbox dinged with a Google alert. Whistleblower targets prestigious Salt Lake firm in financial scandal. No names yet, but the timing was no coincidence. By noon, my phone buzzed, 3 missed calls from an unknown number. I knew it was Yvette. I didn't answer. The news spread fast. Quiet firms don't attract headlines unless there's blood in the water. And there was. People had questions. Clients demanded answers. Board members scrambled for distance. Yvette and Mom didn't know where the leak came from. Not yet. But they would, because I wasn't done, not by a long shot. This wasn't about money anymore. They had taken more than that. They had stolen years, safety, and trust. And when I was at my weakest, they'd chosen their reputation over my life. Now it was their turn to feel powerless, and I was only getting started. It started with a blog post, anonymous, scathing, and picked up by every local outlet within hours. By the end of the week, Thorn Equity, the holding firm for Morrow Pike, and the financial web behind my family's success, was bleeding from every direction. I sat in my apartment, lights off, the blue glow of my laptop flickering across my face, as I watched the empire unravel like yarn from a rotten hem. Whistleblower reveals financial manipulation at top Utah firm. Morrow Pike co-founder implicated in misconduct allegations. State investigators seize financial records in growing Thorn Equity scandal. Each headline hit like a match on dry brushwood. And I watched it burn. First came the resignations. Board members stepped down. One of the partners, Leonard Pike's son, Grant, released a thinly veiled statement about shifting priorities. Translation: he didn't want his name buried in the rubble. He knew what was coming. Then came the clients. High net worth individuals pulled their accounts, companies distanced themselves, and institutions froze their dealings. Word on the street was that banks were quietly closing lines of credit. Even the building itself, the marble and glass shrine to my family's name, suddenly had security consultants guarding the front lobby. I didn't need to ask why, but the best part, the lawsuits, class action. Breach of fiduciary duty. Breach of ethics. A group of clients from California filed a motion claiming intentional mismanagement of charitable funds, one of the shell charities Yvette oversaw personally. It was poetic, and while the news anchors kept it formal and neutral, the online forums didn't. They left their own sister to die and used her account to expand a firm? That's cold. If even half of this is true, they deserve to rot. The rage was spreading faster than I could read it. I had become the ghost they thought they buried, but ghosts don't fade. They linger. They whisper. And when they scream loud enough, people listen. I didn't leave my apartment much. Didn't need to. Everything I wanted was happening right from my screen. The family name, once synonymous with prestige and power, was now a punchline. And Yvette? She finally cracked. A voicemail came in at 2:14 a.m. Eris. Please. I know it was you. Just, can we talk? You don't know what you've done. Oh. But I did. I stared at her voice transcribed on my screen and deleted it. She had chosen money over blood. Image over truth. Silence over love. Now I chose silence, too. Only mine was weaponized, and Thorn Equity, it was collapsing, one broken trust at a time. He came to my door on a Thursday morning, wearing the same leather jacket he'd had since I was a teenager. It looked older now, worn and cracked, like everything else about him. Micah Remy. My father. Once a ghost, now flesh and blood. I didn't invite him in at first. Just stared at him through the chain lock. He looked tired. Unshaven. Like the media firestorm had reached him, even across state lines. Eris, he said. Voice trembling. Please. I kept the door closed a moment longer, savoring the shift, the role reversal. He was the one left out in the cold now. Then I undid the chain and let him in. He stepped inside slowly, like the space was sacred or haunted. I said nothing, just watched him take it all in. My small apartment. The oxygen concentrator I no longer needed. The chemo cap folded neatly on the bookshelf. Reminders of the girl he left behind. I didn't know how bad it got, he said finally, wringing his hands. I didn't know Yvette and your mother did that to you. You didn't ask. He winced. I thought staying away was the best thing I could do, he added, weakly. You were always stronger than them. Not then, I said. Not when I needed you. The silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable, it was damning. Every second of it screamed the truth he didn't want to admit, that he'd abandoned me when I was most vulnerable, whether out of fear, guilt, or self-preservation. It didn't matter now. He finally sat across from me at the kitchen table. He looked around, searching for something to say that would make it better. "I saw the news," he muttered. "Yvette. She's destroyed. You really did it." "I didn't do it for revenge," I said. "I did it because I needed to live. And I couldn't do that while pretending their betrayal didn't matter." His eyes welled, but I didn't trust those tears. They were too late. Too performative. "I came here to say I'm sorry," he said. "To tell you. If there's anything I can do." "There's nothing," I cut in. "I buried that little girl who waited on birthday calls and Sunday visits. She's gone. I had to become someone else just to survive." He nodded slowly. Took a deep breath. And then, without another word, he stood. I walked him to the door, just like he'd walked out of my life all those years ago. But this time, I was the one closing it. He turned once at the threshold. "You're nothing like them." "No," I said, locking the door behind him. "I'm not. And that's why I won't be broken by them either." I didn't make headlines. No splashy interviews. No tell-all memoir or primetime exposé, but I won, not with fireworks, not with fury, just with quiet, deliberate steps forward while the Moreaus stumbled through the ruins of their reputation. A month after Micah's visit, I launched my non-profit clinic, Hollow Root Wellness, named after the plant my mother once claimed could draw out poison. The irony wasn't lost on me. It started small. 2 exam rooms. 1 nurse. A social worker who volunteered on weekends. We didn't cater to the wealthy or well-connected. We served people like I had been, sick, ignored, and scraping to survive. I didn't need my family's money. I had my own now, donations from people who believed in what I built. Quiet grants from whistleblower reward programs. Even a private investor who admired my resilience and rage. Though I never told her the whole story, word traveled fast through Salt Lake City's underground networks. Patients showed up with folded prescriptions and eyes full of desperation. We gave them more than medicine, we gave them dignity. Meanwhile, the Moreaus tried to rebuild. Yvette rebranded. Dropped her last name, as if that would erase her sins. She started a boutique consulting firm called Eve's Strategy, a sleek website full of buzzwords and fake smiles. But behind the scenes, she was blacklisted. Quietly pushed out of real boardrooms. Whispers of pending charges still followed her like smoke. I received an embossed invitation to the Kincaid family reconciliation dinner about 6 months later. I didn't RSVP, but I did see the press photos afterward. Mom smiling stiffly beside a charity banner. Flanked by half-empty tables and cautious donors. A performance, nothing more. Their gestures were hollow, curated for the illusion of grace under fire. None of them looked toward the back of the photo, where a quiet plaque hung in the reception hall. In memory of those forgotten too soon. I'd donated it anonymously, and that was enough. I didn't need applause or closure. I'd learned something far more powerful than revenge: freedom from their expectations. From the tightrope of approval. From the myth that family must be forgiven simply because they share your blood. My name wasn't on any firm anymore, but it was on medical licenses. Tax documents. A building lease, a future, one I built from the ashes they left behind, and while they scrambled to salvage a reputation that no longer mattered, I stood in a sunlit hallway lined with patients' thank you notes, and breathed for the first time in years. No cameras. No speeches, just the quiet wind they never saw coming. It was early, just after dawn, when I parked across the street from the old Moreau house. The same pale blue shutters. The same warped front steps. The same cracked birdbath I once chipped with my scooter when I was 8, but it wasn't home anymore. Not really. I stood there for a long time. Watching the sun climb over the rooftops, painting the sidewalk in gold. The street was still asleep, empty and quiet, like it always was in those early hours when I used to sneak out just to feel free. In my hand was the letter. 4 pages, handwritten. No return address. No signature, just truth. not revenge, not bitterness, just truth. I walked up the porch steps slowly, each one creaking like a ghost under my feet. I folded the letter once more, slid it into the envelope, and tucked it beneath the welcome mat. The same mat they used to tell me to clean my shoes on, as if dirt from outside was the only kind that mattered. Inside that letter, I told them everything: how I knew about the forged sale of my house while I was in the hospital, how I overheard the conference call when they thought I was too weak to understand, how I forgave them, not for their sake, but for mine, and how I no longer needed them. I told them about Hollow Root Wellness, about the patients we helped and the names I remembered when I needed strength. I even mentioned the nurse who used to sneak me ginger candies during chemo, how kindness from strangers had filled the gaps my own blood left empty. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't want one. I just wanted to end the story where it began, with them knowing that I had survived them, and then I walked away. No doorbell, no knock, just footsteps on pavement and the weight of the past falling off my shoulders like a second skin I'd finally outgrown. As I reached my car, I looked back one last time. Not in longing, not in grief, but in certainty. Let them read it. Let them sit in that silence, feel the walls echo with everything they never said, and realize the one person they tried to erase now lived louder than they ever would. The Moreau name would fade. Their empire had already cracked. Their legacy would become a cautionary tale, but mine, it had just begun, and all it took was a letter on the porch. Thanks for listening to Eris's story. If you felt that twist of betrayal, that spark of justice, or that quiet strength, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful true story narrations. And hey, drop a comment below. What would you have done in Eris's shoes?